Alucard, it's another witch, and you pay a very reasonable sum for the second witch to bewitch the first one, and then you go home and go on with your affairs as always. There was always such nice, easy ways out. In the medieval period, all you had to do was confess, do a penance, and be sprinkled on with a little holy water, and the situation was reasonably well in hand. We still have the fears and the worries, but we've lost confidence in the remedy, and that is a rather sad state of affairs, because we now have no way of getting ourselves out of these attitudes. Once we get into them, it becomes a deep and involved and troublesome process. We just are a little less optimistic about how to cure our own infirmities. Perhaps too much dependence on the professional level of things. The point to be very definitely made is this, that as time went on and down into the 20th century, we have a kind of black magic that has drifted along, that has taken on, in some instances, a rather respectable and sophisticated look. The old sorcerer with his pointed cap and long black robe covered with stars has vanished. We have now what might almost be termed the mental magician. He has taken the place of all these other things. And we do still believe that people exist who want to hurt us. We also believe that there are certain persons who can hurt us. And whether this hurting is done by means of chaining a demon, or whether it is done by the natural orneriness of the magician himself, makes very little difference to the sufferer. He actually believes that he is in constant psychic or spiritual danger due to the malicious intent of someone else. Now, that this should be a belief is quite understandable. Our so-called level or veneer of sophistication is pretty thin, and beneath the surface of our so-called mental advancements and attainments, there is still very much of the primitive and very much of the frightened. We all live very largely influenced by fear. And fear is a mysterious thing and is most deadly and most dangerous when the object of that fear is most difficult to isolate or distinguish. Blind fear is the most terrible thing of all, because there's no way you can open your eyes for it. It is simply there as a terrible compulsion to terror within yourself. And nothing that man has ever developed in the form of sophistications apparently can touch this basic atavistic anxiety which is within him. So we are all born with it. We all have to struggle with it. And we all have to solve it much as we solve every other problem in life. Mostly by common sense. Also by building positive beliefs or convictions that are larger than the negative ones. If we would sit down quietly by ourselves, perhaps, and think some of these things through, we would be forced to make decisions. But by the time we are thoroughly frightened, we are in no mood to make decisions. The immediate terror is greater than any judgment that we can be expected to focus on the situation. So the same problem that answers ignorance in every other form must be applicable to this form. The only answer lies in the individual developing within himself positive resources of understanding and insight that simply will not permit him to take on negative and essentially destructive attitudes. And whenever in the history of civilization men have followed strongly after constructive beliefs, demonism has faded out. Whenever these beliefs were themselves compromised and men fell back again upon their terrors, demonism increased again. Therefore, we are reasonably certain that wherever the individual does develop inner resources, he is able to protect himself far better from blind fears. I think that in this particular problem, of course, philosophies such as the Platonic philosophy of Greece and the Buddhistic philosophy of India are of the greatest practical help. Because the individual, if he has some kind of a basic philosophy upon which he can lean, will have a tendency not to fall so quickly into a completely chaotic and unphilosophic point of view. Most students, for instance, of mysticism, metaphysics, and esoteric sciences and arts in the United States now in this century believe essentially in a universe that is ruled over by proper, orderly laws. Most mystics and most of those persons who by nature and temperament might possibly come under the pressure of too much belief in invisible forces in life, most of these people claim sincerely that they believe in a good God. They claim one of two things: either that God is good, or if they're rank materialists, that God does not exist. And if God does not exist, and there is no purpose to the universe, then we have no reason to suppose that evil exists either, because if there is any enduring principle, there is no doubt from all of our observation and reflection for thousands of years that this principle is essentially good. So if we believe, for example, as in Platonism and Buddhism, that this universe is the product of a divine mind, that this divine mind of itself is inevitably and eternally good, and by the very nature of itself produces out of its own nature only good. If this universe, therefore, is a product of divine consciousness and is ruled over by just laws, where in all the heaven and earth of justice is their place for psychic plaguing of one person by another, something has to be wrong in the picture somewhere. If a person is subjected to psychic malpractice, which he hasn't earned, which he doesn't deserve, and for which he has no way of protecting himself reasonably, and he must endure this because some other person wishes to take advantage of him, and the one person is not punished for his evil, and the victim is not protected against this evil, what happens to the concept of universal law and order? Well, the answer of the afflicted person usually is that the universe of law and order is a long way off, somewhere in space, and the difficulty of the moment is right here. And this is considered to be irrefutable. But the more we think about it, the more we realize there has to be something wrong with the picture. We have to realize that if it were true that by means of the faculties that we are normally endowed with, we are capable of exercising extraordinary malicious influence over other minds, if it is possible for a mind, for good or for ill, to control the life or destiny of another human being, simply because this mind is stronger and the other mind is weaker, and the weaker mind has no defense whatever, we would be in a situation in which the whole world could very well become involved in what might be termed psychic warfare.
Back extensions are great to strengthen the lower portion of your back, your erector spinae, the muscle lining the bottom part of the spine on each side. Have a back extension machine here. You want your thighs firmly against the pads. You want to imagine having a board in your thighs, feet into place against the pad back. Lock your feet just barely above. You want your thighs. Have a back extension machine here, the spine on each side. Have a back extension machine here, all the way back down. Use your handles here. Repeat several more sets. After you finish, use your handles here. Down, slow. Hips just barely above the top spine on each side. Have a back extension machine here. You want your thighs firmly against the pad, all the way back down. Key things to remember: thigh placement, hips just above extensions, using your erector spinae, the muscle on each side of your spine, lower back. Machine here. You want your thighs. Have a back extension machine here. Do back extensions using your erector spinae, the muscle on each side of your spine, lower back.